Israel says it will reopen Gaza's southern Rafah crossing when the search for the body of the last Israeli captive held in Gaza is completed. The crossing with Egypt was scheduled to reopen this week as part of the U.S. brokered ceasefire agreement. Israel says the border will reopen under full Israeli oversight and for the movement of people only. The statement from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office comes on the day top U.S. officials visited Israel to facilitate more humanitarian aid into Gaza. Antony Loewenstein joins us now from Sydney. He's an independent journalist and the author of The Palestine Laboratory. It's a book on the Israeli arms and surveillance industry. Anthony, thank you for joining us here on Al Jazeera. So Israel says it will oversee this opening on a limited basis for the passage of people only. What is that likely to look like in practice?
In the short term, I fear not very much, because this border or this crossing has been closed for essentially nearly 2 years. And what Israeli officials are saying, not so publicly, or certainly in the Israeli media, which is often not translated into English, is that the aim really of this crossing reopening is to allow many Palestinians to leave and not so many to come back. In other words, there are huge amounts of Palestinians who have been in Egypt now, often for the last 2+ years after Israel's genocide, who essentially have been stuck there in limbo, can't get visas anywhere else. Many of them want to come back, or at least some want to come back to maybe help rebuild or see their families. But what Israel wants is the huge amounts of Palestinians to leave and not come back, to go to who knows where, Egypt, Somaliland, God knows which other country. And that really is the longer term Israeli aim here. And I fear that if this crossing reopens in a more serious way, only monitored by Israel, that will be the long-term goal.
Now, phase 2 of this ceasefire, it includes, as you mentioned, the reconstruction of Gaza, the beginning of it anyways. If people are not allowed to come back, given that this plan also down the line has provisions for the eventual creation of a Palestinian state, will maybe the Board of Peace, maybe one of these oversight bodies that are also being created, will they need to step in? Are they likely to step in to allow people to move both ways through this border?
I mean, I'd like to think so. The answer is yes, but let's not forget the Board of Peace, and it's almost impossible to say that term without laughing in a sort of grimly humorous way, is overseen by Trump. Now, Trump has a deep loathing of Palestinians. He has for years. He's deeply racist towards them. So ultimately his goal, and in fact the goal that Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, gave last week at this presentation in Davos, made it very clear. There's not really an aim of helping Palestinians in the long term. They claim that's to give them jobs, opportunities and housing. But when I saw that presentation, in fact, it reminded me very much of Haiti. Haiti is a US client state, has been for years, and there's huge of industrial parks that have been built there, low-cost housing, low-cost production for clothes that are then sent to American markets. I see a very, very similar thinking when the US and I guess the Board of Peace is proposing something similar in Gaza, to have huge amounts of Palestinians living in particularly low quality housing for low-paying jobs, to make what? For which markets? And I fear this is a model which has been repeated over and over again. I've done a lot of work over the years on the issues of disaster capitalism, people making money from misery, essentially. And I see very much what Israel's wanting to do there, building some kind of high-rise skyscrapers for tourism on the bones of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in a pretty grimly similar way.
And as we have seen throughout the past 2 years, Anthony, there are a lot of Palestinians in Gaza who have very substandard housing at this point because of all of the destruction that's happened. They're living in tents that have not been able to hold up to the weather, have not been able to hold up to 2 years of this weather. What is this opening of the Rafah border, this limited opening, likely to mean for all the aid that has been stuck on the other side, given that Netanyahu's office specifically said it's for the passage of people only?
Well, ultimately, it's only if the international community pressures Israel to allow more international aid in. I mean, this is the bottom line about so many of these questions. Are the international community, which I guess in some ways means Europe, which has been usually feckless about this question, the US clearly has no interest, in my view, in actually allowing Palestinian lives to be better. As you rightly say, anyone who can see any image Gaza's in the middle of winter at the moment. It is freezing cold. There are huge amounts of people living in tents. There's no rebuilding. And it's worth saying that the idea of potentially rebuilding Gaza, whatever that means practically, at the moment Israel still controls close to 60% of Gaza. And they are killing Palestinians every single day. So without massive amounts of influx of more aid, and in fact it's clear, as many viewers will be aware, that Israel is trying to impose massive restrictions on international aid organisations, MSF and others, who are simply providing life-saving aid, forcing many of them to potentially leave Gaza because they can't essentially honour ridiculous requirements by the Israeli state. This is what international pressure must look like. And I fear that it's not going to come from the Europeans or the Americans. So where's it going to come from? That's what I wonder right now, and it concerns me.
All right, Antony Loewenstein, thank you very much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.